You find the dragon on a rainy evening. You had been walking home through the forest for almost an hour when you heard the sound coming from beneath an old oak tree. At first you thought it was a strange bird. Then you thought perhaps it was a fox caught somewhere in the undergrowth. But the sound came again, and this time you were certain it was crying. You followed the noise through the wet grass until you reached a small clearing. Rain fell steadily through the branches above you, and the ground was covered with fallen leaves. At the base of the oak tree was a hollow, almost completely hidden behind a curtain of roots. Something moved inside. You crouched down. Two enormous golden eyes stared back at you. But you froze. The creature inside the hollow was small, very small in fact. It couldn't have been much larger than a house cat, although it had 4 little legs, a long tail, 2 tiny wings, and a pair of curved horns on its head. A dragon. You had never seen a dragon before. The little creature stared at you for several seconds. Then it sneezed. A tiny puff of smoke escaped from its nostrils. You couldn't help smiling. Hello. The dragon made a soft clicking sound. You held out your hand. It sniffed your fingers cautiously and crawled forward and pressed its nose against your palm. It was warm, much warmer than you expected. You looked around the clearing. There was no nest, no larger dragon, no sign that anyone was coming back for it. The little dragon looked up at you. Then it climbed into your coat. You laughed. All right. I suppose you're coming with me. The dragon made a quiet noise and settled against your chest. You began walking. The rain continued falling as you made your way through the forest. Every few minutes you felt the little creature shift inside your coat, making sure you were still there. Eventually, you reached your home. It was a small cottage at the edge of the forest, with a stone chimney and a wooden porch. You opened the door, stepped inside, and immediately placed the dragon beside the fireplace. It crawled out of your coat. For a moment, it simply stared at the fire. Then it spread its tiny wings. You had never seen anything so happy. It walked closer to the fireplace, curled up on the rug and sighed. You sat down beside it. The dragon looked at you, then crawled into your lap. You scratched the top of its head. Its eyes slowly closed. Within minutes, it was asleep. You watched the tiny creature breathing softly against your stomach. You had no idea what you were going to do. You had never owned a dragon. You weren't even sure what dragons ate. But for tonight, none of that seemed important. The fire was warm. The rain was gentle. And the little dragon was sleeping. You carefully lifted it and carried it to a basket beside the fireplace, placing a folded blanket underneath it. The dragon opened one eye. You whispered, "Go to sleep." It closed its eye again. You smiled. The next morning you woke to something pulling on your blanket. You opened your eyes. The baby dragon was standing on your chest. It was staring directly at you. You stared back. It tilted its head. You tilted yours, and then it sneezed. A tiny flame shot from its nose and singed the edge of your blanket. You sat upright. The dragon looked at the blanket, then at you. Then it slowly hid its face behind its wings. You couldn't help laughing. It's going to be one of those mornings. You got out of bed. The dragon followed. It followed you into the kitchen. It followed you while you made breakfast. It followed you to the front door. When you stepped outside, it followed you into the forest. You soon realised that it didn't simply follow you. It wanted to stay beside you. Whenever you walked too far ahead, it hurried after you. Whenever you stopped, it sat beside your boots. And when you sat down beneath a tree, it curled up against your side. By the third day, you had become accustomed to having a dragon around. You learned that it loved berries. You learned that it hated cold water. You learned that it liked sleeping in warm places. You learned that it could breathe fire, although at the moment its fire was barely strong enough to light a candle. You also discovered that it was incredibly curious. It would spend hours watching butterflies. It would chase falling leaves. It would try to catch its own tail. And whenever you opened a book, it would climb onto your lap and stare at the pages as though it could understand every word. Every morning, Ember seemed to have a new habit. On the fourth morning, you discovered that it liked breakfast very much. You had barely placed a plate of berries on the table before Ember climbed onto the chair, stretched its wings, and tried to pull the entire plate toward itself. You moved the plate out of reach. Ember looked at you. You looked at Ember. You can have some. Ember made an excited chirping sound, but you have to wait. The dragon stared at you with enormous golden eyes. You pointed toward the floor. Wait. To your surprise, Ember sat down. You gave it a single berry. It ate it. Then it looked at you expectantly. One at a time, Ember sighed. It was perhaps the most dramatic sigh you had ever heard from such a small creature. You laughed and gave it another. By the end of breakfast, there were berries scattered all over the floor. You began calling it Ember. You weren't sure why. The name simply felt right. One afternoon, you decided to teach Ember how to fly. You found a wide meadow not far from the cottage and placed it gently on the grass. Ember looked at you. You pointed toward the sky. Go on. It spread its wings. The wings were surprisingly large compared to its body, although they were still too small to carry it very far. Ember ran. It jumped. For one glorious second, it flew. Then it landed directly in a bush. You rushed over. Ember poked its head through the leaves. It looked embarrassed. You tried not to laugh. It sneezed. A tiny flame came out. The bush caught fire. You stared. Ember stared. You quickly put it out with your coat. Maybe we'll work on that later. The dragon seemed perfectly happy with this decision. Instead, it climbed onto your shoulder as you walked home. You carried it the rest of the way. As the days passed, the forest began to feel different. You started recognizing its sounds. You knew which birds sang in the morning and which ones appeared at sunset. You knew where the wild berries grew. You knew where the stream became shallow enough to cross. And you began noticing that the forest seemed to change depending on Ember's mood. When Ember was excited, tiny blue flowers appeared along the path. When it was sleepy, golden lights gathered around the cottage. When it was frightened, the trees seemed to become completely silent. You wondered whether the forest was responding to Ember. Perhaps Ember was responding to the forest. One evening, while sitting beside the fireplace, Ember climbed onto your shoulder. You looked at it. What? Ember stared toward the window. You followed its gaze. Outside, the forest was glowing. Thousands of tiny lights floated between the trees. You had seen them before, but tonight they were brighter. Ember jumped down and ran toward the door. You followed. The moment you stepped outside, the lights moved toward you. They gathered above the clearing, then began drifting deeper into the forest. Ember looked at you. You looked at Ember. Do you want to follow them? The dragon nodded. You weren't entirely sure how you knew it was a nod, but somehow you did. So you followed. The two of you walked through the forest beneath the golden lights. The path became narrower. The trees became older. Soon, the forest was so quiet that you could hear Ember's little claws touching the ground. Eventually, you reached a clearing you had never seen before. In the centre was an enormous stone circle. Inside the circle were dozens of strange markings. Ember walked toward them. One of the markings began to glow. Then another. Then another. You stepped closer. The symbols formed a pattern. And suddenly, Ember began to glow. You watched in amazement. Golden light surrounded its tiny body. Its wings stretched outward. Its horns became brighter. Then for just a moment, you saw something behind the little dragon. A shadow. Enormous wings. A long neck. A dragon far larger than anything you could have imagined. The image disappeared. Ember returned to normal. It looked up at you. You crouched beside it. What was that? Ember pressed its head against your hand. You smiled. Whatever it meant, you would figure it out eventually. You stayed in the clearing for a while. The golden lights floated above you. The forest whispered around you. Eventually, Ember curled up against your leg. You sat beneath the stars, and for a little while, you forgot that the world outside the forest existed. You began to understand something about the little creature. Perhaps you hadn't rescued it. Perhaps it had found you. The thought stayed with you as you walked home. When you reached the cottage, Ember climbed onto the rug beside the fireplace. You added another log to the fire. Then you sat down beside it. The little dragon crawled into your lap. You rested your hand gently against its back. Its scales were warm. You could feel its tiny heartbeat beneath them. You thought about the first night you'd found it, beneath the old oak tree. You had assumed it was lost, but perhaps it hadn't been lost at all. Perhaps it had simply been waiting for someone, waiting for you. Ember lifted its head. It looked directly into your eyes, then it made a quiet sound. Not a growl, not a chirp, something softer, almost like a word. You smiled. I know. You didn't know exactly what it meant, but somehow you understood. You were its home now, and it was yours. That night, you made a little bed for Ember beside your own. You placed a soft blanket inside a wooden basket and set it close enough to the fireplace that it would stay warm through the night. Ember inspected it. It stepped inside, turned around 3 times, and climbed straight back onto your bed. You laughed quietly. That's not your bed. Ember looked at you. It didn't move. You pointed toward the basket. Ember looked at the basket, then looked back at you. You sighed. Fine. You pulled the blanket over it. The dragon curled up against your chest. Outside, the rain began again. You could hear it moving softly through the trees. You closed your eyes. Then just before you fell asleep, you heard a strange sound outside. A distant roar. Not frightening, deep, ancient, powerful. You opened your eyes. Ember was awake. Its golden eyes were fixed on the window. You got out of bed and walked over. The forest outside was dark. You couldn't see anything. Then lightning flashed somewhere beyond the trees. For a single instant, the entire forest was illuminated, and high above the treetops, you saw wings, enormous wings. Something was flying through the clouds. You looked back at Ember. The baby dragon was staring at the sky. Then it looked at you, and you understood. Someone had come looking for it. You expected to feel afraid. Instead, you felt strangely calm. You knelt beside Ember. You don't have to go anywhere. The little dragon pressed its forehead against yours. The distant wings disappeared beyond the clouds. The forest became quiet again. You returned to bed. Ember climbed onto the blanket and curled against your chest. Its warmth spread through you. You listened to its breathing. Slow, steady, safe. Whatever waited beyond the forest could wait until morning. For now, you were together, and that was enough. Outside, the rain continued falling. The fire slowly faded. The trees swayed gently in the wind. And somewhere far above the clouds, an enormous dragon disappeared into the night sky, leaving behind a trail of faint golden light. You closed your eyes. Ember fell asleep against you. And as you drifted into your own dreams, you could almost hear a voice carried through the rain. Not a voice you recognized, but one that sounded grateful. You smiled in the darkness. Then you slept. And for the first time in a very long time, you dreamed of flying. In the dream, you were above the forest. The cottage was tiny below you, surrounded by silver trees and glowing streams. Ember was flying beside you, no longer small enough to fit in your arms. Its wings stretched wider than the cottage itself. You could feel the cool night air moving around you. Below, the forest seemed endless. You flew over mountains covered in snow, over rivers that shimmered like ribbons of moonlight, over villages where thousands of tiny lights glowed beneath the trees. And finally, you reached a great mountain rising above the clouds. At its peak was an enormous stone doorway. Ember landed beside it. You stepped onto the mountain. The door opened before you could touch it. Beyond it was a vast chamber filled with golden light. There were hundreds of dragons sleeping there. Some were no larger than Ember. Others were enormous, ancient. Their bodies curled around mountains of treasure, their wings folded beneath them as they slept peacefully. Ember looked at you. Then it walked through the doorway. You followed. Just before you entered, you looked back. Far below, the enchanted forest stretched beneath the stars. And you understood that this was only the beginning. There would be time to discover where Ember came from. Time to learn why it had chosen you. Time to discover what waited beyond the forest. But for now, you simply walked beside your little dragon. And somewhere between the dream and the waking world, you heard Ember make that same soft sound it had made the first night beneath the old oak tree. a sound that somehow felt like a word. Home. You smiled and slept deeper.